All right, guys, what's up? Welcome back. And thanks for joining us live here with Paul Shoemaker. Paul, thanks for coming, man. This is awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it very much.
Um, so before we get going, I just wanted to take a moment to give a shout out to Phil from Newton Fire. So, Paul, you'd put something on your Facebook or Instagram. I don't remember what it was, and Phil tagged us in that, and we reached out to you, and this is kind of how we ended up here. So, just wanted to give him a shout out. We're going to be talking about lithium ion batteries, fires, hazards, tactics, all of that stuff today. So make sure if you have any questions, you put them in our chat. Barry and John are working on the back end today. They're going to be filtering questions to us. So we'll dive right into it. Paul, you want to just start by giving us an intro? Let us know about yourself, how you got into this, what you're doing right now, all that good stuff.
Yeah. So oddly enough, I've been in the fire service for about 15 years, and funny thing is the company's name was Next Level Extrication because what I really was heavily involved in 15 years ago was extrication, and I basically was thriving around the fact that modern vehicles were changing and they were becoming more electric from hybrids. Back in I think 2009 is when I caught wind of like then this all electric vehicle coming out, which was Tesla, which ended up coming out in 2012. And so this progression really just focused me on this extrication side of things and pushing myself through that extrication side of things. I ended up meeting some pretty cool people and getting to do some video training videos for Tesla. And through that process of the training videos with Tesla, I ended up getting in contact with NFPA and starting to do some work with NFPA. And what basically I focus on is anything from adoption. So, on the consumer side of things, how do we get people to adopt more of these things, all the way to like currently what I'm doing is writing training videos with two other individuals. One's a battalion chief, one's a retired captain out of Detroit. And now what we're doing is basically going to create training videos, everything from electric vehicles all the way to stored energy panels and scooter fires and things like that. And they'll be like training modules type of things that you've seen through NFPA before. And so doing all that work with NFPA and getting kind of involved with that, I ended up starting to work with UL. And at UL, what I do is I sit on an advisory panel for kind of a couple different advisory panels. One is ESS, so stored energy systems. So that's batteries that are associated with solar panels, their fire behavior, their reactions, whether they're confined or not confined. And then I cover on another advisory panel everything electric vehicle related. So kind of like what's the suppression thoughts behind it? What tactics are we going to use? And we're kind of going through that whole process of testing things and all that type of stuff. And so, that's kind of where that's put me. And then having that knowledge base, I ended up starting to teach people a long time ago. It was probably about 8 years ago. And I was doing it for free. And, having a wife and a brand new kid at the time being, my wife was like, you're not going to teach for free. You're going to start getting out there and start making some money. So I charged very, very little for a little bit. And then, it just kind of spiraled from there. And now I'm just so involved in it and passionate about it that I kind of try to get out to as many people as I can and speak to them about what I'm seeing on my end of things, from all the testing we're doing at UL to being a firefighter for 15 years and seeing how that's correlating with what's going to happen to us on the fire grounds if we're not safe. And so that's why it's very, very passionate about getting out and making sure that I actually speak in front of people and try to save a life kind of at this point. So.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And so you've been in the fire service for 15 years, and Next Level Extrication is your own company. Is that right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
I'm the owner of it. And then I for the lithium ion battery side of things, it's so much information. I don't have anybody that helps me with it because it's all in my head. It's not stuff that I can write down on a piece of paper and teach people overnight how to go teach firefighters. But I do have a couple adjuncts and primary instructors that work with me on the extrication side of things. So
And we talked about this. We talked about this a little bit beforehand. We were setting up the show. You said there's really only like 7 people or so that are involved at the level that you're involved in the country with development plans and doing all this testing with lithium ion.
Yeah, I mean, from the firefighter side of things, there's a
Right.
lot of people heavily involved to try to make this work. And I would, 7 is more like leaning towards like people that I would trust to teach this to firefighters. I do think that there's some other people out there that are that could get the information out, but then they can't transition that to what does that mean for us on the job. And so
Right.
across the country, sure, you're going to have people out there that have some a very base knowledge of this stuff. It's actually scarier that these people want to try to go write articles or teach people without actually seeing the fire behavior. I mean, I would feel guilty even teaching to people if I wasn't watching it happen at UL. I wasn't heavily involved in everything all the way from the adoption. I think you learn a lot of things like that. So
Right.
when I'm speaking that, I'm kind of just saying at the caliber that I feel safe where people would not get injured, there's probably maybe 7 to 10 across the United States. Now, there's a lot of people who have a base knowledge, probably hundreds, but that's the scary time. We don't want to be teaching people unless we have the accurate information about these things.
Right.
And so even with that being said, I'm not going to say I'm perfect at all. We're constantly learning. I changed my PowerPoint probably last year. I counted, I think I changed it 8 times in 2022 from January till December. So I can't even say that I'm on top of it. I'm just trying my best with everybody involved, but unless you're completely in this 24/7, I don't understand how anybody could be keeping up with this stuff. It's changing so fast.
So passing along the most current information that you have, which is obviously the most important part of it.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
you do a lot of teaching. So just wanted to bring up you're at FDIC next week, right?
Yeah, I will be out there for so typically when I teach this class, I do a hands-on and I do a PowerPoint. Sometimes I do PowerPoint in the morning. We rotate crews out and I just do a PowerPoint again in the afternoon for a different crew. Sometimes I do a hands-on and then a PowerPoint in the morning and hands-on in the afternoon. And it's the 2 options. But with that being said, it's about a 4.5-hour PowerPoint and about a 4.5-hour hands-on. I'm very happy that FDIC has allowed me to be a part of it because they are incredible at trying to get out to the fire service, and it's awesome to be in that position. But I'm only able to talk for an hour and 45 minutes on a 4.5-hour PowerPoint. So it's going to be a compressed, slammed in, jam-packed, as much information as I can give the people in an hour and 45 minutes. And then I'm just going to encourage people to find me outside walking around if they want to shoot some stuff out at me, and we can hammer it out at a drink or have something at a bar. I don't know, but that's where I'm a little pressed. I don't know how this is going to work because I had to really work hard over the last couple months of compressing it down to an hour and 45. But yeah, I'm going to be out there.
Oh, that's awesome. And kind of similar situation here, right? We're going to run probably about an hour and a half or so here. Big thing is that we would love to take questions. So if you're sitting back watching right now, I know we have some viewers on the YouTube stream right now. So if you are watching, please ask questions. Nothing lithium ion battery related is off limits. Is that right, Paul? Here to answer anything you can.
Honestly, dude, if people want to ask me everything from lithium ion batteries to my life, I'm pretty open, man. And I thoroughly enjoy talking to firefighters across the country. So for me, I wouldn't do it if I didn't love it.
Right.
No question is a stupid question. I'll just embarrass you on a live feed, but that's no big deal. No, I'm joking. Honestly, if you don't shoot out the question or think that your question is stupid, I can guarantee you, as long as I've been doing this, somebody else has that exact same question. I'm sure people have heard that a million times. So I thrive off of the questions because it keeps the atmosphere moving. So absolutely, shoot them out. Anything you have, we can hammer it out.
All right. I'll kick us off to get going, and then maybe hopefully we'll get some people asking questions in the chat on YouTube, or if you're on social media and you want to write something there, send us a message or whatever. We have those guys watching it. So just to jump right into it, Paul, where do you see like the biggest threat of lithium ion batteries? Like, is it e-bikes and scooters? Is it vehicles? Is it stored energy from solar panels? Where do you see the biggest threat to firefighters coming from lithium ion batteries?
The biggest thing I could say is all lithium ion battery is a threat to us based on the fact that we are inexperienced in understanding its capacity and what it could do. And how I look at it is when we look at the history of the fire service, we went from legacy construction, and prior to my time getting in the fire service, but still early on in my fire service, we were still, I mean, even to today, we're still talking about how modern is burning faster, and we have less time before flashover, and we're vent limited fires before we even get on scene, and all of these things. And we're still trying to teach the new people, plus the people that came in 15, 20 years ago. And so now what has happened is lithium ion batteries has created its own class. We are no longer legacy and modern. That is all we have to worry about. And in fact, I can tell you a flashover time, you know, in a modern construction home, we're looking, you know, somewhere around 35, 45 seconds, right? Realistically, you know, without accelerants.
Right.
But we are seeing complete flashover with one of these things going into thermal runaway in 20 seconds. And
Wow.
so, you know, that is the concern. So if we look at that transition, we were originally like, what, 3 minutes and 45 seconds with something like that with legacy. And we went to 35, 45 seconds modern. And now we're talking, I'm telling people, you got 20 seconds. You could be in a fire when this thing decides to go into full thermal runaway and then flash itself. And when it flashes itself, it goes from temperatures that we're seeing, like, honestly, just room temperatures. I don't know where you live or where your state is, but anywhere, you know, say it's 60 degrees in your house, from 60 degrees to 1200 degrees in 2 seconds. And then what it ends up doing is calming itself down, but as low as it will calm itself down at this point in time is to about 500 degrees. And so what I'm saying now, that initial one was 1200 degrees in 2 seconds. But now what will happen is the fire will build itself back up, and it may go from 1200 all the way down to 500. Now is when I'm saying we set that timer, and that timer from 500 back to fully flashed over inside that room is 20 seconds. And
Wow.
so whether we're dealing with a lithium ion battery where I see the risk, the one place I would tell you that if you really trained hard, or if you ever took my lithium ion battery fire course, you would really see that the vehicle on the side of the road is just a tactical nightmare. It's not necessarily a problem. And
Right.
once we understand it and we've worked through it and we've trained it, I pretty much feel every class I've taught, I ask the people at the end of the 4.5 hours, and I go, do you feel comfortable handling these things on the side of the road now? And everybody's like, yes. I mean,
Right.
So that isn't a problem because it's outside in an outside environment. Now, do I think there could still be a problem associated with that? Absolutely, because these cars are burning at 2,800 degrees. If it burns at 2,800 degrees and you're in a parking garage, that's outside technically. Say it's an above ground parking garage. That is a totally different nightmare that is incredibly dangerous. If it's hooked to a charger in a parking lot, well, that's incredibly dangerous because it's being fed fuel from the electricity, but it's also a live electrical line. And if it decides to burn through that electrical line, you now have an open wire hanging around, and if you spray water at that, you're basically spraying water at like an open junction box. I mean, so it can have its nightmares and its dangers being out in the open. I'm not going to say it's not. I think the percentage is way less. But one of these things that's encapsulated, whether we're talking about a car now in a garage, an ESS system, which is obviously PV systems on your roof being stored by batteries either, and they can be stored in 3 locations. It can be stored in your garage, on the outside of your garage, or it can be stored in your basement. If one of those decides to go and do its thing while it's encapsulated, that's incredibly dangerous. So now we got a car in a garage that's incredibly dangerous. ESS batteries stored, incredibly dangerous. And now you're talking about putting scooters inside these structures. And I'm telling you that in 2 seconds, when they decide to let it rip, it goes from 50 degrees ambient temperature all the way up to 1200. When does it hit that 1200? I mean, if you're in there doing a search on an odor investigation and there's a smoke-filled house with cold ambient temperatures, but banked down smoke to the floor, and you're just in there trying to find out what's going on in there, and it finally decides to find its ignition point and flash over, it's in 2 seconds. And so your gear is going to instantly combust into flames. Do I think you'll be able to put yourself out? I don't, obviously I think it'd take a minute to burn you probably through your gear, but you're going to probably be on fire. And,
Right.
and it just depends on how close you are to that. There's a lot of scenarios that we could role play on and talk about. But I want to look at it as in today, if it doesn't happen, then that's a good day. But I want people to look at it as, we know it's a potential that what I'm saying right now could happen. So look at it as the worst scenario. Sure. But the worst scenario is what's going to kill a firefighter. It's not the one that that didn't happen. And then you walk away, high five. And all this stuff they're talking about, lithium ion batteries. That's not just lucky that day. Like I hate to put it that way. It just didn't do what it has the potential to do. And you arrived too early, or you arrived after it already did it. You didn't hit that right point where that could have taken you out. And so, that I hope that covers like how serious it could be. And then also not so serious. So.
Right. And one of the things I want to talk about, and this leads into our first question we got here, was we talk about when you get these calls, or at least the couple I've been to, and I haven't had any like fires out of them, just that they burned kind of self-contained, didn't really extend. But you show up and you're not getting that like dark black smoke that says, hey, this is a fire. You kind of have that like white, almost steam looking smoke. And so people aren't necessarily masking up right away. And so our first question here is from Drew Hernandez from Orange County Fire Authority. And he's asking, do you have a good list of like toxic gases that are coming off these LI batteries versus like a nickel cadmium battery?
Yeah, stand by. I'm going to try to share my screen, and I hope this picture is in here. So it wasn't one that I put in my. It is. So here's I'm going to share my screen real quick, and I'm going to just show you a quick picture of what is actually being put off from these chemicals. I will tell you that what we are studying right now is, the question would be, how toxic is it for you and what would happen to you? We are still testing that stuff. And so let's see here how the window, there we go. Boom. Boom. So this is a good idea of what's happening. Can everybody see that picture there? Does that look good on your screen?
Yeah, I can see it. Yep, you're up.
So those are the chemicals. There is nothing about it other than everything you see there. Now, red is flammable and blue is just toxic gases, non-flammable, right? But the problem is, what does this do to your life? We don't know. We just know that it is the worst thing the fire service has ever seen. So we already know that a standard structure fire with modern polyurethane foams and these couches, what they're doing to us from a perspective of causing us cancer, possibly, and those types of things. What is that going to do to our life? We just know that we are not recommending. I don't care if you see the lightest wisp of this gas coming off of this thing. We're recommending that you don't go near it unless you're on air. And so, to add to a little bit of a problem out on the street, even if it's a car fire that we just say, you know what, we're just going to suppress it the way that we were taught, whether you were taught by somebody else or taught by me. And then you're going to think that you put water on it, and at this point in time, it's done doing what it's doing. Sometimes these things are still putting off gases that you can't see. And so the real thought process behind this is, now you're going to be, let's say it's a standard evolution is probably 2 hours, roughly around there. But some of the more serious cases are 4 or 5 hours. If you're around this vehicle for 4 or 5 hours, you're going to have to be, every time you approach it, you're going to have to be back on air. There's just no way to know when it's putting off that gas or not. I would say comfortably, there is a method to know when this thing's pretty much out. At that point in time, you could feel pretty comfortable saying, all right, I'm not going to do that. But I will tell you that then that car goes to a junkyard. And what we tell the junkyard people is that car will sit in a parking lot with 25 feet in every direction. And it will sit there for 2 weeks before you will do anything with it, meaning move it in next to other cars or whatever it is. So it has the potential to do it again up to 2 weeks. I leave that up to the policies and procedures that the organization wants to write. I personally just don't want to risk my lung capacity on some nasty toxic chemicals like this, when all I'm really trying to do is work so I can retire to spend some time with my kids. Last thing I want to do is lose my life to some nasty stuff over a vehicle fire. So,
right. Totally not worth it.
No.
And so the second question we have here from Aaron Skeen is about using foam or other extinguishing agents on lithium ion. Are they effective?
They are not effective. That is stuff that I am going to be testing more thoroughly over the next 3 years. Yes, I know that sounds crazy. It's probably going to be right around 1.5 to 2 years of testing on all these different products. And then obviously writing. Now I'm not doing that stuff, but there will be people writing the processes of what would work best out. So when it's publicly released, it's professional, but I'm
Yeah.
more there as the firefighter to go over these testing things. I will tell you right now, we know 100% it is not effective. It actually makes the problem worse.
Okay.
It appears to make the problem better because foam will instantaneously look like it put the fire out. It will smother it really, really quick and everything looks good. But I always teach people in my class, I always try to tell them, like, what is foam? What is the purpose of foam? And most people's responses are, well, foam is to smother. Well, what is the deal with lithium ion batteries? And at this point in my class, I've already taught people this, so I'll cover it real quick. The point that we are trying to do to break apart that fire triangle in a lithium ion battery is cool. It is 100% cool. It is nothing else. Once it's cooled below about 150 degrees, really it's below 200, but we're not going to get into all that science. I'm going to tell people 150. When it's below 150, it's no longer going into that thermal runaway process. Well, if we smother this thing, it looks like it's out. It smothers it and puts it out. But we've now, knowing that our job is to cool it, what are we going to use to cool it? Well, water is what's going to cool it. It's the only thing that's going to cool it. Foam is a blanket. And I always say, if I'm freezing cold, you give me a blanket, I warm up. Well, it's the same thing with these batteries. We're not cooling them. We're just suppressing it and allowing it to retain its heat inside it. And we'll think we have instant satisfaction because it will instantly probably go out. The problem is rekindles and reignitions. And some of those rekindles and reignitions are happening days later at the junkyard, but we're actually seeing these things rekindle before they've even made it to the junkyard on the back of the tow truck. So the time varies. But also I ask, a lot of people, what is foam to electricity? And it's a conductor. And so now we take foam, we put it over these batteries, these lithium ion batteries, and then we cover it, we suppress it. It starts to build more heat. It's getting trapped inside there. And now we got conductivity. And now all of a sudden the electrical currents are starting to flow through those batteries, which causes it to heat back up, go above 200 degrees, go back into thermal runaway, and then reignite. So that includes everything. There's a lot of companies out there trying to suppress this right now. And I will tell you that the only way I would trust a product in general for me is if it's not tested after working for UL the way I see that they are. If it's not tested by UL, I wouldn't trust it.
So I'll add on to that question. There's a lot of we see like online that these like specialty nozzles and stuff that are coming out for cars and stuff like that. Are those effective, or is there enough testing on those that they seem to be effective? Or do you have any opinion on those?
So I don't want to make there's a lot of people that support me out there in the fire service, and I don't want to create tension where they think I'm out there trying to mess them up. So I don't want to necessarily hammer out specifics on names of these products. As I describe some of these things, you'll probably know what it is. If I end up doing that. But the big thing I can 100% guarantee you they are not tested by UL because that's what I'm doing in the advisory panel, and we haven't even started it yet. So they're not studied or tested. And man, I'm not a big fan of just packing our rigs with more and more stuff. Like I feel like a lot of this stuff through the evolution of the fire service, these things people produce, they want to make a quick dollar, right, on this type of a situation. So they try to produce a product. It costs a lot of money to be certified. So I'm not going to do that, right? If I'm starting this company up. And then where does most of these products that we try to solve problems with that we don't really need the use of it for end up? They all end up in a fire museum. And so, for me, I laugh, but if you think about it, go to a fire museum, and even my history is only 15 years, but you talk to some of these old timers and they're like, yep, that thing was worthless. Yep, that thing was worthless. And so I feel like if people are too quick to start jumping the gun because they're afraid that they don't have the right way to solve this, they're going to buy stuff that is completely irrelevant. I mean, not irrelevant, but completely worthless in solving your problem. And I will tell you right now that you can 100% handle it on scene with just a standard hose line, smooth bore, and maybe some chains and a winch. Maybe you don't want to chain and winch it, but maybe you want to use spreaders and cribbing. But I would tell you that that's the minimal amount of equipment you need, and you can absolutely get it done. And shit, in fact, you could even have a tow company come out and do the flipping for you, you know, to where you don't even have to have the materials. So somebody who may be in a smaller organization, volunteer style department of maybe one station, well, then utilize your tow company to come out and do it. But you can 100% suppress it as long as you understand where you're putting the water and why you're putting the water where you're putting it. You do not need these nozzles that are bent or spraying like a sprinkler system underneath it. A lot of that turns out to just be water wasting anyways, because it's not specifically hitting where you need to be suppressing it. And you're spraying a lot of the undercarriage, but not necessarily in the source of where the fire is coming from. And so then you end up spending 20,000 gallons of water thinking you're doing something, where if I would have flipped it, put a nozzle right up to where I want to put that nozzle, we'd be out of there in 2,500 gallons. But so that's kind of my broad perspective on it. No would be my answer. Keep with what you got. And I'd rather you just pay for the training, or just put the training on yourself and pay for the overtime to have your own instructors teach this to you, whatever it might be, rather than you spend the $45,000 for a piece of equipment that I actually think is completely worthless, you know?
Right.
So, and then some of the, just to add real quick, some of those have very specific parameters. Like, in order for this thing to work, it needs to be within 2 inches of the belly of the vehicle. You know, it only pumps out 8 GPM, but you also need to know what module is burning. And in these cars, these cars are broken up into modules. Some of the new technology coming out there, there's just one continuous battery pack built into the structure of the vehicle. And actually that's a big helping hand, oddly enough, for us.
Right.
But some of the other ones have modules, and you're trying to find out what module is going into a thermal runaway. And you're just going to sit there and poke a hole, which don't ever do. Never. There's not a single manufacturer I've spoken to that I've worked with that says that's a good idea. Nobody should be poking holes in these things. It's puncturing.
Interesting, because that's one of the things like I've heard repeatedly is about poking a hole to get water into the battery.
The number one reason that these things go into a thermal runaway and ignite on fire like a car on the side of the road is an auto accident. It's not something wrong with the manufacturer. Manufacturers are building these things pretty solid. They don't just start on fire randomly. I would tell you there's probably a 3% chance that a battery is going to fail on its own with nobody doing anything to it. That is minuscule. But when they get punctured or ruptured through an accident where the battery pack has now been opened, and the lithium ion batteries have basically 2 sheets of metal with this thing in the middle that prevents them from touching. And if these 2 pieces of metal touch at all, they'll go into a thermal runaway. And the only thing that separates that from happening is oddly enough, just called a separator. They thought really hard about that. Yeah, they were thinking long and hard how they could come up with a name for that. But when they get an accident, the thing will shift or whatever might happen. And now all of a sudden that separator isn't preventing that, and they catch on fire. So if you jam a metal rod or puncture a battery pack at all, you're susceptible. You're opening it up to basically to creating it to touch those 2 pieces of metal together. And now you throw that area into a thermal runaway, and then you realize that that wasn't where the battery pack was that was on fire. So then you try to puncture another module, and then you try to puncture another module. Next thing you know, you put 4 holes in this thing, and those 4 holes may not off gas right away. And so then you finally find the module you want, you suppress it, but you poked 4 holes in there. Now the problem is that can reignite up to 28 days later sitting in a junkyard, and you'll have no clue. And so not only does it have the ability to possibly cause more of a fire behavior, it's also incredibly dangerous. And people like GM and all these companies, not only do they tell us this, no, do not ever puncture these things from the training perspective. It's written all over in their manuals. Never puncture the battery. Never try to open the battery pack. Make sure a professional is around and they're meaning mechanics before you touch these things. So that's the best I could kind of answer that question.
I'm gonna piggyback on that one as well and say if that's you talked to me a little bit before when we were kind of talking about this, that you don't need 30,000 gallons of water to put one of these vehicles out. There are tactics that you can do it with a lot less water. So so just to piggyback on that, we're not puncturing the battery. How are we cooling these batteries effectively without using 30,000 gallons of water?
Yeah, so good question. The first step would obviously be you have to understand these vehicles. That's why training is so important in this. I don't know what kind of training you want to do, but you have got to start learning about these things. The location of the battery is one of the biggest things. And based on the vehicle, all vehicles now, even a hybrid, will react the same way that you're starting to see them in YouTube over. I know Tesla gets a hard hit over this thing. Everybody has to understand Tesla's just got the market. So, there's still probably only, a handful of them that are really catching on fire, but you've been out since 2012. Like, you're going to take the hit here. All of the cars are going to do the same thing Tesla's doing. But with that being said, each manufacturer is different. Where they place their batteries are different. And people will say, well, hybrids have been around since 2000. They have batteries in them. Well, they don't have the same batteries that a lithium ion. It's a nickel hydrate. I think it's nickel hydrate or something like that. Yeah. And so, but the problem is about a year ago, now every hybrid has transitioned over to lithium ion batteries. The only reason you didn't see that in the past is they were lithium nickel hydrate. So now we've seen that transition. So even a hybrid will do the same thing. And a hybrid is different than a plug-in hybrid, which is different than an all-electric vehicle. And you need to know that, because when you arrive on scene and you find these vehicles, by that simple identification of what kind of vehicle that is, you're going to know where the location of the batteries are. And what that means to us is, if I go see it and it's an electric vehicle and I just go, well, you know what? I've seen a ton of videos online that says we're going to put some water on this thing, but in order to put water on it, we're going to flip this thing at a 45 degrees so we can get exposed to the belly, and I'm going to start flowing water underneath this thing. Sure, you go do that. Unfortunately, it was a hybrid. Well, where's the hybrid batteries? They're in the trunk. So we're not cooling anything, nor are we doing anything other than wasting water. Or a plug-in hybrid is different than an all-electric vehicle, because where's the location of the plug-in hybrid batteries? They're interior. They're not exterior. Why is that? Because they still have a combustible motor. So they still have drive shafts, fuel lines, all that shit running underneath there. So what's the point of us flipping it up and trying to suppress it? And you would assume that people would recognize this, but unfortunately, it's just a lack of training. We're just kind of seeing pictures, and we're just going with our thought process on these pictures, and we're just saying, well, every battery is going to be underneath. I need to get underneath there and put it out. And in some cases, some of these new vehicles, they're burning up and in, even as an all-electric vehicle. An all-electric vehicle, and they're still burning up and in, which up and in means up into the passenger compartment, rather than a down and out fire, which is obviously what it states, down and away from the passengers in the vehicle. So understanding the vehicles, knowing where their batteries are, and then suppressing these things based off of that identification is what's going to really ultimately prevent you from those big numbers. And again, that all goes with training. When I put on the hands-on training, I make sure I tell people, I get them on air and I make them go through the process and tell me what they're looking for. And I'll throw them all the way through a hybrid, all the way to an electric vehicle, trying to confuse them. I'm like, well, so where's the batteries? Well, you tell me. I've already started on fire. I told you where it was. And it's more just to make them have that critical on scene. They're actually working the way they train. Why? Anytime we delay that process, we're allowing batteries to get hotter and hotter and hotter. If we start with 100 that are on fire, and because I'm taking a long time to figure out where these things are burning from, and I'm not getting the hose stream in the right place, well, that just within 45 seconds went from 100 to 1,000. And then in 45 more seconds, it went from 1,000 to 4,000 heated batteries. And so now it's getting to the point to where, shoot, now I'm probably going to be here I went from basically, if I would have identified it right away and put the hose stream where it was supposed to be, I went there from being like an hour on scene, an hour. Technically, you're going to be there for about minimum about 2 hours regardless. But I went there from being about a 2-hour fire to waiting a minute and a half to figure out where we're going to put the water to making it a 6 or a 7 hour fire. I mean, that's how quick that can change on you. So
Early recognition is huge in these.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Yeah.
That's one thing that I wasn't aware of myself, and I'm sure a lot of people aren't aware of. So that's awesome information.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have another question here from Mike Leiden. He is asking if you have a rundown on like the level of danger. So Tesla versus scooter versus solar. I tried to get some clarification, but let's say like what's most likely to fail, and then like what's the most dangerous in terms of likely to fail, and then maybe what's the most dangerous as far as like if it fails. So obviously we talked about inside versus outside, but just the generally like what are the more dangerous batteries?
Well, so all batteries, they're kind of different styles. There's pouch style batteries. There's cell style batteries. So every one of them has a different construction, but they're the exact same battery in the fact that how they chemically react. All these vehicle manufacturers have spent a lot of money on these things. So I will tell you right off the bat, it's a 3% failure rate probably across the board if it's a UL studied, UL rated battery, which almost like 99.9% of our manufactured vehicles are all UL rated batteries. So, but that still means that there's still a 3% failure rate, but that's because anything's a 3% failure rate. I mean, even your light bulb is a 3% failure rate. It could burn out, or your light socket could catch on fire inside your house. I mean, there's going to be a failure in almost anything, right? And 3% is very, very low if you think about it, but it's a UL rated battery. If it is not a UL rated battery, the likelihood of it catching on fire and becoming very dangerous very quick, exponentially higher. I don't have a number, but we could probably say somewhere in the 50% chance that thing's going to have a failure. So with that being said, how I like to look at it is there's no way to know unless you're going to like really study these products if it's a UL rated battery, and maybe that's just more for yourself if you're going to buy something for your kid. But for us going into a fire, I don't know if that's UL rated. I know it's already into a thermal runaway, and if it's in a thermal runaway, I don't know how much time I really have, and I know it's very, very dangerous because it can flash up to 1200 degrees in 2 seconds. That's the way I train. But with that being said, an e-bike that is UL rated batteries is about $10,000. So if you go onto Amazon right now and you try to buy an e-bike, you can buy an e-bike for $1,500, and shoot, you can buy them for $700. But I will tell you that the batteries are most likely, I mean, I'm just throwing this out there because I don't know, most likely they are not rated at all. And the problem is that's what most people are buying. They're buying these things because who wants to spend that kind of money? You can get some UL rated batteries in some of these e-bikes in some of these stores for about $6,000, but they're up to $10,000. So I like to make it more drama felt. But yeah, like if you want to go buy a one wheel, there's one wheels out there, and if you want a one wheel, it's about $3,000 for a one wheel, but that has really good batteries in it. But you can go buy a one wheel for like $700. But those are not UL rated batteries, because the difference in reality is, I mean, we're talking hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars have to be spent on testing of those batteries to deem that they've been rated and tested.
Right.
Well, if they're a new company just trying to sell an e-bike, they don't really care. So that is a very, very dangerous situation, because that's what's primarily being purchased out there. On Amazon, it is primarily being purchased e-bikes, e-scooters, gosh, those little things that people zoom around in downtowns in, the little, like, not the scooters, but the little, I can't even think of what they're called. But everything's become the hoverboards. Right. We're even seeing it in RC car batteries are transitioning to lithium. You can go buy a badass RV car, and that RV car is rated battery, but you probably spent $600 on that thing, and that's why it's $600. Or right. You can go buy me, like what I did. I went and bought my kid one. It was like a $40 one. And sure as can be, there's nothing on that thing that says that those things are rated. And so what do? I basically unplug that thing, and it is actually stored in a closet not in my kid's room. It's in a coat closet in the front of the house, where if it decided to do anything, the most it's going to do is burn in that coat closet with the
Right.
doors always shut in there. And that's just because I bought a cheap car. I have seen people charging these batteries, even rated batteries, in their garage, RC cars, and they got up like a bank of these cars that are like, and they're all sitting on the charger. I've seen them burn an entire garage to the ground, and it all started from those RC batteries. Burned it to
Jeez.
the ground, nothing left, burned to the sticks.
Wow.
So that's the best picture I can paint for them. The cars probably are not going to be ever put in that classification as an unrated battery. They're all rated and
Right.
significantly tested, but these scooters are not. So
Right.
that's why if you look and you probably, a lot of these people are probably like referring to these things because they see all these incidents happening in New York.
That's
Well,
what I was thinking of. And they keep mentioning, at least I've heard them mention several times, that they're off-brand batteries, or however they put it. They're not rated batteries.
Yep, they're off brand. And you're not going to tell, like, I love New York doing all this publicity they're trying to do, but you think you're going to convince a consumer? So you're telling me I need to go buy a $6,000 bike? They're like, no. I mean, we're going to have this problem for eternity because nobody in their right mind, including me, who knows how dangerous they are, is going to go buy a $600 RC car for my 5-year-old. I'm going to buy the cheap one and see if he likes it and play with it for a little bit. But people are doing the same thing. The problem is, if you want to get into a danger, what I was trained in the fire service, like in my mindset, when I'm on scene training, even if it's company level standard, I always put a child in there. I don't know why I have to train that way. It makes me work faster and harder. And that's because I have 3 kids. But that's my mindset. It's not like there's a victim in there. I don't look at it as there's a victim in there. I look at it as there's a 6-year-old child in there. So with that being said, training that way, think about the thought process of most homeowners. Who's buying these things, right? It's not a 45-year-old adult buying them. I mean, shit, I do want a one wheel because I want to cruise up and down the beach on a one wheel. I feel like that'd be the coolest thing ever. Every morning I want to wake up with a cup of coffee, cruising my one wheel up and down the beach, and then I'll go to work for the day. I don't know why I want to retire that way, but with that being said, most of the time for Christmas, we're buying these for our kids. Well, what does a kid want to do with it? They want to charge it in their room. Like, they want to look at this thing. Right. They want to like clean it every night or whatever it is, the thought process. And the parents are clueless. They're like, man, I got that thing for I don't even know, $500. That thing's sweet. My kid loves it. He wants to put it in his room. I'm so happy to see my kid so happy. Well, if we know that thing can go into a full flash over 1200 degrees in 2 seconds, that could happen while that kid is sleeping. And there is no surviving that. There is none. And so when we want to talk about which one is the most dangerous, it's going to be that bike or that scooter, but more importantly, it's going to be that bike, that scooter in a kid's bedroom. That is the ultimate deadly fire and concern. So,
piggybacking off of that, so we talked a little bit about New York, and obviously New York probably dominates the feed of lithium ion battery fires right now. Mostly, I would imagine, related to population, but are we seeing more failures with these batteries in an area of the country versus another, aside from like being population related? So are like weather elements and like salt on the roads or things like that affecting how these batteries are failing or how fast they're failing?
Time will tell. Time will tell. I don't think I have enough data or I've even been given enough information from any of the places that I do side work with where they have told me that I will tell you that the science is yes. It just, how long is that going to take? I mean, I know that all the classes I've taught anywhere from Seattle all the way up to like Michigan and Portland, Maine. And like Seattle's not going to have this problem. Colorado might have a little bit of this problem, but I am fucking shocked, excuse my language, by how fast a car in Portland, Maine, in Michigan is rusted out to the bones because of how much chemicals they put on the road for to keep the snow off the road. I mean, you can barely even extricate these vehicles. By the time they're in the junkyard, you're basically just cutting through butter because it's just so rusted out. You don't even get to feel that sensation of that pop in that B post or A post because it's just rust. And so knowing that those battery packs are made of aluminum. They're made of caulking and welds. It's going to be only a matter of time before those things corrode right through that welding and caulking, and then it gets water in there. And once it gets water in there, as corrosive as that is, it gets in there and starts breaking apart that battery. And then the only thing, again, I go back to the only thing in there is that separator that's keeping that from happening. Well, that separator doesn't to go away, and boom, we got an issue. So that's my theory. That's not anything that's documented, but just knowing the science behind these things and watching all this stuff. I'm traveling around the country looking at this stuff. I'm going, holy problem. And these departments I'm teaching up there, they're like, yeah, we see like one Tesla every once in a while. It's like, well, that's because there's not that many people up in those areas, but those weren't as popular up there. Now you got competition of about 68 different manufacturers making all electric vehicles. So they're going to, once numbers go up, is this going to become a problem? That's why I said only time will tell. Yes. As well as with some of my folks, I do a conference call with clean city energy companies, coalitions, across the United States for NFPA. And Virginia just did one with me, and they're really concerned about hurricane seasons. And what does that mean for them? I just told them right off the bat, 100% you should be. I don't have a way to paint the picture and say, well, you're not going to have that problem, because once these cars are submerged under salt water, that just goes back to the same thing that Michigan and Portland, Maine, and all those people are having issues with their cars rusting out. That salt water is incredibly toxic. And will just eat through any of that stuff as it sits there. And once it finds its way into the battery pack, boom, it's the same problem. So depending on where you are across the United States, I think you're going to see that be more of an issue. But it also bases off of population density. We put a lot of magnesium chloride down in Colorado. Our population is much more greater than, some of these places like Newcastle, Maine, where I went just a couple months ago.
Right.
But theirs corrode a lot quicker than they're going to corrode here, probably in Colorado.
Right. Is there, or will there be policy or guidance on disposing of the vehicles with these batteries? So I was just thinking, you talk about, a hurricane, right? And these cars getting flooded by salt water. Often I feel like those cars are written off. They're totaled, and then they're sent to a junkyard. So they could be sitting there just waiting to go, in a junkyard as well. Is there like guidance coming out, or is there procedures for disposing of these cars properly, so that, 5 years later, after it's been sitting in a junkyard, it doesn't catch, a scrapyard going or anything like that?
I wish I had that information for you too. So early on in this process that I'm not going to be able to get an answer for you on all of them. I will definitely run that by. Some of the best people to talk to is those clean city coalitions. Because when I'm on those calls, I have electricians on there, I have city officials on there. And so I get a lot of answers through that. It is, most of this right now is all city in state specific. So it's not going to be like hands down right at the time being codes. I work with a chief on this UL advisory, and he works for the State Chiefs Association. And I will tell you that they're in the process of making policies and guidelines and all that. And they basically said that like 2027 will probably be the first time you see stuff like that.
Wow.
It's that far out to get. There's so much that goes into writing stuff and then putting your name behind it. I mean, the testing, the organizations have to basically do everything they can and cross their T's and dot their I's to make sure they're getting the right information out. So it sounds like city officials for the state will be able to come up with that quicker than you'll see a national deal. Now, with that being said, currently right now, I have seen studies where some of those vehicles from that hurricane in out of Naples and stuff like that, they were parting that vehicle out. It was totaled, but the insurance company wants their money back. And what they did is they took them to places and started parting out those pieces. I don't know what gets parted out of there. I don't know how they think that that's safe, but that's now in somebody else's car cruising around in some different state that doesn't even have an ocean like Colorado. And they, I don't know, did they take a battery pack and then somebody had a battery failure? So they're like, hey, we got one. We refurbished it and it's good to go. Well, what'd you refurbish it from? And we already know they did that. The insurance company, we already know they parted that stuff out. So I think That's a big problem. And that's what's going to have to be addressed is can you or should you be parting any piece of that vehicle out? Because even high voltage cables, if you have electrical short circuit and all you did was replace the cable itself, that cable is feeding to the battery. So if all of a sudden it's getting a short circuit in that cable line, is it just going to throw somebody's battery into a thermal runaway? I think when that time comes, somebody's going to say these vehicles cannot be parted out based on whatever the damage was. If it was just it's 10 years old, sure, and there's nothing ever wrong with it. But if it's been in an accident or it's been in a flood, I think there's going to have to be something that says these things will not be parted out.
Yeah, that's interesting. So we talked a little bit about, obviously, like these vehicle fires and fighting fires outside. So what if you're responding to, say, it's a e-scooter in a house, or maybe you don't know, what are some of the warning signs you're looking for, like coming up to that might clue you in that, hey, this might be a lithium ion battery, if there are any? Or I know the failure happens in 2 seconds, but what can we do to mitigate that hazard? So if we find that it is an e-bike or e-scooter that's off gassing and thermal runaway, are you advising, like, do you back out of there, or do you immediately get water, or how are we mitigating that hazard of being in that environment when it goes from 50 to 1200 degrees in 2 seconds?
I one of the things I enjoy most about traveling around and teaching people is they give me ideas, because I think we're so new in this. I take any advice that any firefighter wants to give me. And I know that that's part of the stuff that we test, right? And we are going through that process of how do we mitigate these things everywhere from cars to scooters to, something in a garage. What are we going to do about it? I can only tell you what I kind of have a philosophy on. And with that being said, it's still something where you're not going to be able to know. You don't know the temperature at what it's at, right? They all have an ignition point. And some of them are 350 degrees, and some of them upwards of 600 now of ignition temperature for where they will actually light on fire. And so I don't know what that battery's at, and I don't know what manufacturer that battery is. So I don't know, is it at 350? Is it at 400? Is it a battery that lights off at 400? The only way to kind of know what's going on is be involved with dispatch and making sure that dispatch is asking that question prior to hanging up the phone with them. If there's something on fire inside that house, the only way to save us right now from getting injured like that is them asking that question and then informing you and putting it on your CAD system that you're going to a structure fire that has lithium ion batteries in it. We don't know if the lithium ion batteries is the cause of it. And then what I would do when I walk up to that structure is just look at your standard situation. So super high heat, very violent fire, you're going to have a lot of pressure pushing out the eaves, very turbulent smoke, which is going to be a lot different than this. Isn't going to have high heat, right? This isn't really lit off yet at this point in time. This is prior to ignition. So the smoke may be dense, but it's not going to have the pressure and the velocity that you would have from the high heat fire, where it's actually pushing out of any cracks and soffits and things like that of the structure. So you're probably going to more see it in the situation where you're going to open the door. You're going to see a little bit of wispy gas coming out from underneath, and it may be brown. It may be a little bit black. It may not be just completely white, because it's as it's heating, it's still heating plastics and things like that around it. So you may walk up to that. I mean, the telltale sign for me would be, well, why would I, in my mind, I'm thinking this, why would I open up a structure fire, a door to a structure fire, and have banked down smoke all the way to the floor with no temperature, with an ambient temperature of what it is outside or inside that house? Right. And I would start to think at that point in time, right then and there, is this a lithium ion battery fire? Even if it's not, since the future is telling us that we're getting so many of these things, that's where I would shut the door and maybe try to go figure out really quick. Do you guys have lithium ion batteries in here somewhere inside your house? If you can't get a hold of the RP, you're going to have to do something. And yeah, I think it's too hard to paint the picture of every situation. But I think the biggest thing I can tell you now is slow the fuck down, because rushing into that thing because, oh my God, we got a ripper and I'm going to go flying, 55 feet deep into this structure. All of that gas that's around you, that we've always been told, if you're passing high heat superheated environment, atmosphere. Well, it's not. It's nothing to be cooled. So you're not going to spray any of that down. You're going to be like, what is going on? This is a vent limited fire. Let's go find out where this thing is smoldered down to. And you get in 55 deep into that thing, and then all of a sudden it goes from 55 degrees to 1200 degrees. All of that gas, all the way back to the front door, is all flammable gas. So every bit of that is going to light at the exact same time. None of it is going to slowly light and then creep up to, it's all going to light all around you. And so, you know, slowing way down is key. And then, you know, obviously explosion potential is a huge issue. I mean, these things, when they find their ignition temperature, they find the oxygen concentration they want, and they're encapsulated in either a room or a garage. Say it's a garage, they're blowing garage door, 2-car garage doors, about, you know, let's say right around 400 lithium ion batteries in there. They're blowing a garage door 60 to 200 feet off the garage door. So I would also say to you this, how are we going to now go approach garage fires where we think it's a ripping garage fire, and we walk up to that thing and you're on a truck company? What's the first thing you're going to do if you got some smoke pushing out around that garage door? What are we going to do?
Take the door.
We're going to open it up, and we're going to open it up with a K12, right? But now you're throwing a 40,000 RPM K12 up across your neck as you make a cut, and that car decides to find its ignition temperature or those stored energy systems, and it blows off, and now it takes that garage door, and we're seeing it go 60 to 200 feet, and you're in the front of it now with that K12. So what's the difference? Well, the difference for me would be, what garage fire rips without black soot around the top of the brick or around the garage door? There's going to be black, nasty, nasty black stuff if it's actually on fire. If it's not sticking to the brick and it's not sticking to the white garage door or whatever it is, that's probably not a ripping garage fire. There's probably something in there. And in fact, I would want to go to the RP and say, do you have batteries stored for your PV system? Or I want to go do a 360 real quick. Go look for the red labeling on the sides of the house and find out if it's a PV system. And if it's a PV system, I would immediately say, we're going to say this has batteries until found out otherwise. Maybe it doesn't, but that's where I would start. Then I would want to go find that RP or the homeowner and say, do you have batteries in there? Or is it just fed straight into the grid system? And if they don't know, then assume it's got batteries in there. The other question would be, do you drive an electric vehicle? And you have to be precise with these people. You know, is it a hybrid? Is it a plug-in hybrid? And is it all electric? Because that's the difference of, you know, 1,000 batteries all the way up to 8,000 batteries. It's a huge difference. So I want to know what car is in there. And then I always tell people, when you're dealing with these fires going down the road, everybody in the green is I'm never going to get this point across to my fire department, at least at this point in time. You know, it would take a while for some change there. But the reality is, why we're trying to say that is, everybody in the green means stay in the grass. If you're in the grass and this thing decides to blow off that garage door, every time we've seen a garage door blow off, or we've even done it at UL, it just goes straight out. Path of least resistance. It kind of buckles and then shoots straight out. If everybody's in the green, then you're green. You're good. You're safe. If people start to congregate in front of that driveway and we haven't figured out what it is, knowing that the future is that these things are going to be behind those garage doors more and more often, you're putting yourself at risk. Even if you're just sitting there doing what I've done a million times, which is socialize, like, what's going on with this thing? And we're all sitting there right in front of the garage doors. We're waiting to be told what to do, to go in. Are we going in? Are we not going in? What do we want to do? But you're standing in the most dangerous part, you know?
Right.
So it's such a hard question to ask of what can we do? Again,
it sounds like education and awareness.
100%. It's training. Right at this point in time, people should be putting on training left and right. And I will tell you, through the Clean City coalitions, their fire departments have told me several times that there is a grant out there for them to pay for anybody that's going to teach them about lithium ion battery fires, and the government is paying for it. So, I mean, you can put on the most elaborate training you want right at the time being, but that is the only way right now to save a firefighter's life.
Right.
So, and I can give you, I work with a guy The whole reason I got into the UL stuff was because we started with the ESS system, which is stored battery packs, right, from the PV system. I work with the captain that basically started this process based off of his incident. And so he's an awesome dude. He's one of the coolest guys I've ever met. But I know the real story, and the real story is really alarming. And so what it was basically in 2019, that's when basically this whole process started about lithium ion batteries and more of an explosion potential concern. Is it's Surprise, Arizona, for the people that know where that is. And so basically it was a stored energy system in a commercial industry. So the way commercial batteries are stored, they're basically stored off the property in a Connex box is the best way I can paint that picture for you. Not some are Connex boxes and some are built like a Connex box, but a little bit different. But the construction is the same. And I don't want to get into the whole story about it. I just want to tell you how concerning this is and why you should be alarmed about this. But he's on the hazmat team. He's dialed in. He knows exactly what's going on. The incident was called out. They arrived on scene. It was 6 hours later before they finally decided to make entrance into this unit and figure out what they need to do to fix the problem. They don't know what the problem is because it's lithium ion. It's not really on fire, but it's off gassing. So what is this problem? They 6 hours after talking to chiefs and coming up with plans and is it doing this? Is it doing that? They finally decided to open the door. He took one step inside that Connex box, right? And he looked around with the tick. And remember I told you what the temperatures do within 2 seconds? I'm going to show you a video here in a second if I can pull it up of what happens to these things within 2 seconds. But this matches everything we've seen. He looked down the gully of this thing. He said with the tick, nothing. He looked down the other way. It was nothing. But he said it was filled with gas, smoke, but everything was cold. There was nothing hot. And they knew that from the outside when they were doing their investigation for 6 hours. There's nothing hot in there. So he went back down the long part of that gully to look down. And when he did that with his tick, he said he saw something and was getting ready to back out, went, what the hell was that? And put his tick back on it. And that was it. What he saw was what he believes was a flame. And it started to change colors on his tick. Next thing you know, he wakes up 60 feet from the building. He was blown through a chain link fence. His entire crew, which was 4 people, were all blown out and through a chain link fence. And he was on fire. He was burning on fire. And the only thing that put him out was his probationary firefighter with a hose line, who was unconscious and basically woke up out of nowhere. And it sounds like it's a really funny story because basically what he said to his probie was, at some point recently they were training, was like, dude, if you see red stuff, you put water on that red stuff. That's your job. And it sounds like the probie described it as he woke up, he saw red stuff, he opened the nozzle, he sprayed whatever was red, shut the nozzle down and went unconscious again. What was red was the captain on fire, was burning.
Jesus.
So he says that if he wasn't put out, he probably would have died because he went unconscious anyways. He only was up for 2 seconds to know he had been blown out away from the building, and then he went unresponsive and then woke up, and that's all he knows, pretty much.
Jesus.
So picture that you walking into a structure and you're trying to figure out what's going on, and it's a garage issue, and you go interior and you try to open the interior garage. And if we know that had the potential to do that exterior, he wasn't interior, right? All that explosion went out and around him, and it still did that kind of a damage. Now put yourself in front of a door going into a structure, and you're standing in front of it and you do that exact same thing he just did. I mean, you're not going to survive it. You won't survive it. He was lucky because the pressure was still hurt him, still hit him, still caught him on fire. Now you're going to catch on fire. 100% you're catching on fire at 1200 degrees. You're also taking an explosion, blunt force trauma straight to your chest because through this little tiny orifice, which is just the door. But now you're inside the structure that's now burning. So now you got 4 people. So what kind of Rick evolution do we have? In our organization, we got 4 people on that crew inside where we're going to be able to rescue all 4 of them at once at 1200 degree temperatures. Now throw into the mix that I told you, once it spikes at 1200 degrees, it goes back down to about 500 degrees. And within 20 something seconds, it goes into full flashover. So what Rick evolution do we have where I can pull 4 people out in 20 seconds?
None.
And so that's why I'm like, we have to slow down. We should not be in there to do that. And we shouldn't just be going in there because we think we're so badass that we're going to go fight a fire. And then we find out that it was lithium ion inside that garage and we should have done something completely tactically different.
So I have a question and I definitely want to see that video. Are the batteries shielded so that we can't get a good view of them with the thermal imager? Is that an issue? So obviously you said that different manufacturers, they might actually light off at 300 or 600 degrees. Are they being shielded so it's hard to actually see that in your tick, or is that something that you could see fairly easily with your tick? At least obviously the gases are cool, but you can see that the scooter or whatever it is reaching, like the lowest known
I don't have enough data to tell you that like a scooter is going to be different because it's surrounded in plastic. So
right.
I would assume yes. A scooter, you're going to be fine. A car, I do know is it has its tricks to it because it's encapsulated in aluminum. But you're going to see a heat source of some sort. I don't know if it's going to tell you I think it's going to hide the actual temperature of the battery because it's going through a pretty decent plate of aluminum. And so you may see it being warm, but I don't know how warm it is on the other side of that plate. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If once it's opened up and it's burning on fire and we're suppressing it, that's one of the ways that we tactically put it out. We use a tick to identify and make sure that temperature is down around 150 degrees. But that's because it's now opened up through 2,800 degrees of burning a hole in the bottom of this thing or in the top of this thing, where now we can get that tick in there and actually see those batteries. So, but it's going to be so inconsistent. We're going to have a real hard time trying to tell people that you're going to see the actual temperature so you can be on more heightened alert. Like, oh, dude, this is at 400. That means it's going to be either a 400 battery, a 500 battery, or a 600 battery. We're close. We're not going to know. We're not going to. Maybe you're going to get a better idea in the plastic scooter because it's just plastic instead of metal. So
and like you said, it's going to something that hot's going to be melting the plastic and stuff around it, I imagine.
Yeah, let me see here if I can. I just don't know if this will pop up on my. Let me try to pull this up here for a second. So if I'm just minimizing it. So if I disappear, don't worry about it. I'll be back here. Do you still see me?
Yeah, I can still see it.
Okay. Trying to get this to play, but I'm going to drag it over here. Some people may have already seen this. Where did it go? There it is. Boom. All right, here's the video. I'll pull it up right now. Now, this is a scooter fire, but this is the stuff to show you about the concerns you should see with the explosion and in the incredibly fast flashover conditions. So let's go here. All right. I just want to make sure this will play. There we go. Can you see that?
Yep.
Perfect. So if we take a look at this video, there's a scooter that you see in bedroom 1, and then you see it say low. That's the scooter. It is plugged in. It's being ran through a electrical current to try to throw it into thermal runaway. So it goes into a thermal runaway. On the right picture, top right-hand corner, you'll see it says 52 degrees Fahrenheit. Yep. It's now gone into a thermal runaway. So now it's over 200 degrees. That's what's happening, but it's going in much faster till it hits its ignition temperature. Watch that temperature on the right-hand corner where it says 52 to 53, 54, 1,200
Holy
degrees.
Shit.
Okay. That's just a bedroom. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to rewind it and restart it for you. So think about you walking into this thing. Now I want you to look at the bottom left-hand photo of what it does to that window when it does hit its 1,200 degrees. So 52, 57, I think is what it goes to, and then just right up to 1,200. And you see the pressure that it blows that window out. It also blows a door out as well. So when you look at that, now go back to the temperature in the top right-hand corner. It was 1,200 degrees. It goes down to 500 degrees here. It's working through its process. So if you look right now, it's 143.48. 143.48 drops down, but watch it start climbing now. And then look at the window in the bottom left when it does complete flashover. So 143.48. Complete flashover. We haven't even hit 20 seconds.
Wow.
Okay. And we're back up to 1200 degrees.
Wow.
So when I tell people my concern about it is nobody's talking about it from a firefighter's perspective of tactically how do we standardly approach these fires? Well, fuck, man, we go right in there. And I would take a hose line in that thing all day long and never would have been concerned about a single thing. It may be vent limited, and that's a little bit of an issue. I just want to make sure this thing ain't going to pop off on me, but I'm going to go in there and we're going to go take care of some business. But you get down that hallway, when that decides to do what it does at its that one point where it completely transitioned over, what did that just do to you? It just killed you. It probably killed you. And I don't know that, but again, I'm not going to teach people at the lowest possibility. I'm going to teach them at the largest possibility and the concern. And so, you know, what do I have to say about it? I just have, all I can say is anything encapsulated inside a structure, inside a garage, we got to slow down. I can also show you this. This is another picture of one that just happened the other day, and this is in Colorado. And so, oh shoot, what did I do here? Let's pull that up. Let's take a look here. So where is that? Did I not save that? Oh, I thought I pulled that up. I guess I did not save that. I'll have to look and see if I can find that here real quick. Here's that garage door being blown off. You can see it flying there. That's just from lighting batteries during testing. That's what happens.
While you're looking for that, Aaron's asking, is submerging e-bikes better versus spraying?
Yeah, I actually like that process if you can get in there quick enough. One of the things I would say, if you're gonna submerge it, dude, I would just fill up a bathtub inside the structure. You got a perfect place to submerge that thing. If you take it outside, you don't have anything on your rig to submerge it. Maybe call in the hazmat team and they have overpacking drums and things like that. But I mean, that's just, you're still putting it in a position where it's not underwater. And underwater seems to be the thing that puts it out almost immediately. So for me, I would say, I love it, but I utilize it more as like what I just talked about. Utilize it as throwing it into a bathtub. But remember, you're going to have to be inside, grab that thing as quick as you possibly can before it finds its ignition temperature to do that, because you don't want that thing to do that with it in your hand.
Right.
Otherwise, you can do the standard trucker move where you just huck it out a window. But then again, like I said, you're mitigating that problem now outside, and we just don't have that ability to do that. So,
well, and that off-gassing of chemicals for anyone that's out there, breathing that stuff in is terrible too.
Yeah, and now it's just floating around everywhere. So I'm paying attention to you as you're asking. I'm just trying to get these pictures. I thought I put the pictures up, but I guess I did not.
All right. And I think you already answered this question, but I'm gonna read it because somebody asked, is reading smoke dealing with lithium versus traditional? And I think we already hit that. We're looking at like that lighter in color, not pressurized, kind of cool smoke versus that sticky black, hot, pressurized smoke.
Correct. I mean, you know, it's going to be heavier, probably heavier than air. So it's going to tend to want to push down lower. The problem is we just have wind driven, and there's just too many environmental issues that could change that. And by the time you're in there and you're getting called to this, that smoke might be all the way banked down to the floor, and you're not going to get to see what's heavier or not.
Right.
But it is actually kind of, if you saw that fire that just happened, it can be black. What else is burning off in there? It can be some of the plastics heating up and all sorts of stuff mixed in with some of that white. Typically on those cars that you see out on the road on a down and out ventilated lithium ion battery fire pre-ignition, it's pretty white. And so you may see some stuff burning that looks like fuel burning on the ground, because it's got flame burning down, hitting the concrete and banking out to the outside of the vehicle. You may be like, oh man, there's a fuel line ruptured underneath that thing. Well, again, this goes back to identifying the vehicle. Does it have fuel lines? And then the real thing is it will be burning at 2,800 degrees. So that flame is red hot, right? And it's very clean burning. But what is happening outside of that is white gas, right? And if it was fuel burning, it would be black. So that kind of gives you an idea. You're going to see like white gas coming off of something that you would think is burning fuel line, and it's actually just lithium. And all the white gas that's coming off of it is pretty white. I mean, it's pretty clean looking.
Right.
So I mean, with all due respect, clean, not to breathe in, just no color.
It looks clean.
Yes, but I would say to you at a much more minute level, if you look at reading smoke and we talk about violent, aggressive fire pushing out the eaves, whatever, with pressurized, all that stuff that we've been taught all our career, stick with it. Because if you look at that e-bike fire, that thing was pretty aggravated. And as it got aggravated, if you see that bike or you see that car and it's a light wispy gas, well, you probably have some time before that thing's going to rip.
Right.
If you see it being aggravated, it's got pressure behind it and the gas is still white, but it has got pressure behind it. That thing is getting ready to rip really, really soon. So use the pressure and volume to your advantage. Don't necessarily worry about the color because it can be different. So I like that question. That's the best way to probably go through that process.
Awesome.
All right, I'm looking here and see if it loaded. Come on, no, it didn't load. All right, let me do this. We can keep going, and I'll keep hammering this out there.
Are there concerns with how large batteries are being installed in homes as backups? And is there a push that you know of towards home appliances like stoves and things like that that are going to be using lithium ion for efficiency and backup in the future?
Good question. I don't know that. I will tell you that everything is in the transition phase. I mean, how much is transitioning all the way from, just think about your lawn equipment. Nowadays, they're just trying to put your lawn equipment into a complete lithium ion batteries. So everything is changing at an incredible rate. And it's hard to say that they would do that because gas isn't really an enemy to our environment. What they're trying to fix is obviously green gases for our environment. So until it becomes that big of a problem, I think we'll still have gas ranges and stuff like that. Do I think like an electric oven could change to that? God, I don't know. I mean, it wouldn't shock me, put it that way, but I don't have an answer for you on it.
Right.
All right, let's see if that loaded on there.
Where can people go? Obviously you do this training and that's awesome, but where else can people go, whether it's online or whatever, to raise awareness for themselves for these issues?
Well, selfishly me, of course, don't go anywhere else. Just call me. I don't want you to go anywhere else. No, that's just because I enjoy getting out there. There really isn't anything yet. I mean, I know at NFPA right now, we are finishing the car fire, but it is very, very basic. That's the problem is anything that can be released over the web right now is going to be very basic and it's going to be short stuff. It's going to be like an hour PowerPoint, virtual PowerPoint that you can take online. Well, if you don't have somebody reading it to you that knows the understanding of these batteries and the dynamics of the fire behavior, you're just reading death by PowerPoint, which is really hard to put into perspective of what it's like to be a firefighter unless you're enthralled in this stuff and you're just doing it so much.
Right.
So there's stuff out there, but you're going to have to take a little bit from everybody, right? Like I'm on a SAE 2990 committee, which is like a battery committee. And they're guys that are brilliant about batteries. I'm not, and I don't care about that. But I need to know, how do I transition that into the fire service, and how do I understand what is that potential for that fire behavior based off of what the chemical reaction is with these batteries. So I am involved in that. I'm involved, which is training. I'm involved with UL that's doing the certifications and the testings. But there's also times where I'm watching videos of how the manufacturers are making it. I travel to different manufacturers and talk to the engineers. You just have to do the same thing. Go to a dealership and talk to them about where's the location of their batteries. Pop the battery, the rear seat up and take a look at what's underneath there, or look underneath the car. And so there is no way that you're going to get the information that you want out of this without putting in the work, or like I said, selfishly, just hit me up and I can come out and teach a class. And I hopefully have not had a single bad review. Things seem to be going pretty good for me. So I should make the class pretty fun.
That's awesome. I think going back to Phil from Newton, he said that he was looking at having you guys out, I think, or something like that, or maybe he already had you out or something.
Yeah, I've been all over New Hampshire, been to Boston, I've been to North Carolina, and dude, I love it. I love getting to meet these people, and honestly, I stick true to my guns when I say that. Like, what I love the most is that I'm able to learn from these guys, because I don't know the tactics. I don't have all those answers. I like to see some of these dialed in firefighters being like, dude, have you ever tried this? And I'm like,
Right.
that actually might work. I have not even thought of that. So the whole reason I love getting out there is because I then take that information and then I'll go back to UL and I almost bring it to him. I say, this is what we should test. We should test this because this guy told me
awesome.
this one time. So this is that picture just to show you this happened less than 2 weeks ago. That's called a 4xe Jeep Wrangler, which is a plug-in electric vehicle. And basically what happened is the manufacturer, the homeowner installed his own level 2 charger in there, which is a huge no-no. The car is built very, very well. Shouldn't have done this where it went into this thermal runaway the way it did. But you're going to have people fabricating their own charging units in their house. There's nothing to say that they can't do that. And It basically was pushing too much of a charge into this battery. It threw it into a thermal runaway. And when you take a look at those guys right there, you look at the garage door right there, the frame of it bent down. Well, here's where the garage door ended up. So shattered, right? Blew the glass out. If you look at the glass is shattered. If you look inside there, look at how clean that interior is. There's not a whole lot of fire there. The fire wasn't the problem. It was all the gases being ignited. That's the problem. And so that's why you have to slow way down. I will tell people this too. If you go on a garage fire and there's black smoke chugging out of that thing and you know it's aggravated, it's on fire, right? At that point in time, I don't give a shit what's inside there. It's on fire. There's no way it's going to really explode. It's already actively burning all of those gases that have the potential to create an explosion. The concern isn't when it's on fire. The concern is showing up too early and it's not on fire yet. Those are the investigations behind that. That's the stuff that's going to take you out. So also don't have a fear and sit there and go, well, should we set back? I mean, this thing is burning. This thing is ripping inside this house, but it could have a lithium battery in there. No, go back to Fire 101. Like, there is no way that thing will explode if there is a flame inside that is actively burning that product off. It's just when that product is not being burned off, that's the stuff that's going to take
the buildup of the gases and the simultaneous ignition, which the fire doesn't allow that to happen.
Correct. Yep.
Right. Do you have any, and we're going to wrap up soon. So for people in the audience, our friend Paul here came off a pretty gnarly 48-hour shift and is just banging some energy drinks to get through this. So we'll let him go here in a couple of minutes. But any tips or tools that you have for homeowners, drivers, and consumers for minimizing their risk to both damage and safety? I know you said about not plugging in some of these unrated batteries into your kid's room and things like that. But anything else that you have?
Yeah, so it's pretty extensive. This is another part of the training aspect I try to get at is the consumer. If you're going to charge a lithium, I mean, people ask me all the time, do you drive an electric vehicle? And the answer is fuck no. No, I'm just joking. Would I? Yes, I would. I would drive one, but I wouldn't park it in my garage, and I probably wouldn't drive around with it with my kids in it. Okay, so it's got a very specific usage, and that's just to drive me to work and back, so I don't have to pay for gas. I have a eco lawnmower. It's all the components are battery operated. It's lithium ion batteries. Dude, I love the thing and it works great. But what I do with the batteries is I charge them when I charge them, and I stay outside in the yard, working in the yard. And when they're charged, I take them off the charger. I also have those plugged into what do you call those strips? What is it?
Like the power strips?
Yeah, power strip. Thank you. I have them plugged into a power strip with an on and off switch because it can trip, and it will trip at that power strip. And then that's plugged into my wall. So if anything was to go into a malfunction, I kind of have a safety thing, but I still turn it off. When it's done charging, I turn it off. I take the batteries off. Charge your scooter at home. Do whatever you want to do. Charge it in the garage and then take it off the charger. Set a timer, whatever it is, for it to be charged. I know it seems like a pain in the butt, but if you're going to buy this thing, it's not that big of a pain in the butt versus with what this could do to your home.
Right.
The cars, they're pretty built to do what they're supposed to do. If they're going to fail, they're going to fail. You're not going to fix that problem. You don't need to go out there and unplug your car. It's designed to shut itself down when it shuts itself down. They actually, it's odd, but like 100% of a lithium ion battery on like a car like that is actually only charged to 80% or something like that. It's like 87%. It says 100 to you, but it will never let it get to 100% because overcharging these vehicles will cause them to go into fire, and over discharging them will cause them to go into fire. So it will also never let your battery go below like a certain percentage as well. And that's the same with your phone. That's why your phone, if it dies, the battery dies, you can always turn it back on for a second. It will let you look at it, and then it shuts off again. It is dead to you, and it says it's 0%, but there's actually still like 10% battery left in there. It just doesn't want you to use it because it will cause it to ignite on fire, possibly.
Interesting.
So, all of those things for safety reasons. I will tell you the biggest safety concern I can tell people for consumers across the country is you have to be very, very knowledgeable on your car. And what I mean by that is electric vehicles run off of electricity. That means the parking brake runs off electricity. The transmission runs off electricity. The doors run off of electricity. The locks run off of electricity. If it loses power, it loses electricity to your doors. There is a different way to get out of your door than the standard door handle usage that you've been using every day. That may mean that you need to pull the door handle twice. That may mean that you have a separate lever that is a mechanical over electrical latch, but it is not where your normal daily door handle is. It is located somewhere else in the vehicle. And you need to know where that is. And that's why I won't drive around with my kids in one, is because if something was to happen, I would have to have the confidence that my kids would know where that mechanical over electrical latch is to pull it. And if they aren't at that age yet, I'm not even going to risk it. And so not a problem, right? This isn't an issue. People are it's the same way I would tell a person on the street as a public education thing, just to say, listen, do you train to get out of your house if it catches on fire? They're like, yep, or no, whatever. I would say just do the same thing for the car. If you're going to own one of these cars, make sure you understand and read, which is called the Emergency Response Guide, an ERG. Read that, and it will tell you if you lose 12-volt battery power. Just to give you an example here, this is what an ERG looks like. Sure that we go here, right here. If you look down here at the bottom or right here at the top, it says to open the Model Y front door from the inside without 12-volt battery power, lift the mechanical release handle located near the window switches. And if you look at the picture, it's different, right? That's not where you open your door every single day. Where you open your door is actually right here, which is a little push button. And then it says only the front doors are equipped with this mechanical release handle. So that means your rear doors don't have that same handle. They have a different way for you to get out. And so by encouraging people to actually read what that means, that will prevent people from getting trapped in these things. And once you know that you can just pull that handle and get out, then you're fine. But those are some of the things that I would tell you got to be pressed to the public out there or consumer about all of it, everything from scooters to cars.
Right.
The rest of
knowing what it is.
Yeah, and the rest of it's up to us. Are we going to be able to handle this thing? I hope we get there. I think, like I told you, 8 times last year, my PowerPoint changed, and I'm sure it will continue to change as I continue to do some tests and we continue to work real hard to save some firefighters' lives. But it's ever evolving. There's not enough. I feel like I have a lot of information to provide people. It's not always the answers that they're looking for because we're still just trying to get those answers.
And I think that's important because people want answers on how to do this. And I think it's important sometimes for people to know that answer might not be there. So we have to make the best tactical decisions we can make with the knowledge that we're given. And, thankfully people like you are out here trying to spread as much information as possible so we can make those decisions, with a little bit of education behind them. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I love doing it. I'm very happy, very blessed to be able to do it. I can't thank the Lord enough about being able to let me do this stuff. So I'm very happy to do it. It doesn't, no stress off my back. Obviously there's fees associated with it, because I can't travel for free, but I enjoy meeting the firefighters out there that are passionate about it, that want to learn a little bit more and want to try to keep everybody safe. And so I'm going to be there to answer some questions and help out wherever I can. That's my ultimate goal with this company and where the direction I'm going right now with it. So
awesome. So we'll, I think that's a good wrapping up point. We're about an hour and a half in. So, before we go, is there any last minute thing that you would have liked to get out today that maybe the question didn't come across, or anything you want to leave us with? And then, finally, can you just tell people FDIC next week, when you're, or how they can find your class there, and how they can get a hold of you, if they're looking to bring you in for a class or something in the future?
Yeah. So to start with the first one, which is out at FDIC, I think I go out on the 20. I'll have to look. I think I go out on the 24th and I teach on Thursday, I think is what it is. It's Thursday at, I think 1:30. I'll be out there the 25th through the 28th. I'm not staying the entire time. Feel free to message me on Facebook to meet up. Feel free to call me. I don't care. My cell phone is always on me, to chat and go grab a beer. If anybody wants to just get together, I'm game. I'm going to just be cruising around and trying to listen to some other instructors teach me some stuff. And that's kind of what I enjoy doing this for. And I learn, like I said, from those people as well. So, my class, though, as far as I think it's just called Lithium Ion batteries, something about tactics for suppression, something like that. But it's definitely on that Thursday. And again, expect a very downgraded, if you do show up, it's only an hour and 45 minutes in a 4.5 hour PowerPoint. So it will give you some information, but I have already a feeling people are going to be like, I want more, or it just didn't answer all of my questions. And unfortunately, they're hour 45-minute time slots, and it's just banging them out. We got to get all these instructors out there. So, my phone number, it's just, for anybody who wants to write it down, I don't care. It's just 720-355-8375. It's also public. You can find it. And then really, if you're looking at scheduling classes or information on scheduling classes, it's just nextlevelextrication@gmail.com. And then I always ask people, when I teach a class, to come find me on Facebook, give me a like and a follow, because that helps me communicate to more people. And I'm also on Instagram as well. And I always tend to try to post some sort of valuable information on there, whether it's huge to you or very minuscule. I'm always trying to post something out there to keep the thought moving in people's minds about these things. So, and that's everything. I still do extrication. I mean, I'm helping teach a 3-day extrication class the first week in May. So I still do extrication. Awesome. So when I post things, I'll post things about extrication and fire stuff. So
awesome. Well, we really appreciate you taking the time to do this. Again, just a big thank you to Phil from Newton for tagging us in the post you put up. This has been awesome. This is only our second time ever going live, and the first time kind of doing it like this. So hopefully everybody out there thought it went really well.
Did we get a lot of questions? I mean, I know you probably couldn't get to all of them. I'm just curious if there was a ton of questions.
think we answered most of them, but I'll throw this out there too, because we talked about it. If people have other questions, or people who are watching this video after the live date that have a question, feel free to leave a comment. And then we had already talked about at some point trying to do a follow-up and maybe answering some more of those questions. And like you said, your stuff changes 5 times a year, so maybe different information, next time we're able to speak. So same thing too. If you don't follow us on our social media, please give us a like and a follow, subscribe to the channel. And unless you have anything else, Paul, I think we'll let it go there and let you take a nap, man.
I appreciate it. If anybody wants to send me some patches, I'm trying to build that patch wall.
Yeah, we'll send you one.
Okay. Yeah. I love it. I love it. All right. Yeah, no, thank you so much, man. Really appreciate this time you spent with me and setting all this up. I know it's a lot of work. So equally, I want to return that thank you to you guys as well. even the back office back there. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. And I want to stay in touch. So let me know. And if we ever want to do some more of this later down the road, we can hammer out some more stuff later.
Yeah, I'd love to, man. I'd love to.
All right.
All right, guys. We'll see you back in 2 weeks for the next episode.